You are about to watch the legendary story of the Odyssey, one of history's greatest epic adventures, and the unforgettable journey of Odysseus, king of Ithaca. After days of punishing sailing, his battered fleet finally arrived at a strange harbor. The water inside was perfectly still, sheltered by towering rock formations. For these exhausted survivors of the Trojan War, this tranquil cove looked like a desperately needed sanctuary. They were starving, battle-weary, and eager to drop anchor in a place that offered rest. But Odysseus had already learned a painful lesson on his voyage. The sea's sudden, unnatural calmness was an illusion, and seemingly peaceful shores often hide the most lethal threats. The harbor's true geography was a narrow bottleneck enclosed by steep rock faces. Desperate for relief, 11 Greek ships sailed directly through the gap, clustering inside the walls. Odysseus, however, hesitated. Trusting his instincts, he anchored his solitary vessel outside the entrance. That single, cautious, tactical deviation was the only thing standing between the king of Ithaca and total annihilation. Unaware of the impending danger, a group of sailors went ashore to secure basic, vital supplies like food and fresh water. Instead of a freshwater spring, they found a giant woman. Her sheer, unnatural size made these hardened war veterans freeze in absolute terror. She led the trembling scouts to her husband, King Antiphates. The ancient texts describe a creature of mythic horror, a monstrous, towering cannibal. Without a word of warning, Antiphates reached down and seized one of the terrified sailors, devouring him on the spot. The surviving men turned and fled for their lives, but their frantic race back toward the water did not bring them to safety. It merely triggered the massive ambush waiting in the hills above the harbor. Suddenly, the cliffs came alive. Thousands of giant Laestrygonians appeared on the ridges directly above the trapped inner fleet. The giants began hurling massive stone boulders down into the enclosed bay. The rocks crashed through the fleet like thunder, violently splintering wooden decks and snapping heavy masts in half. As the ships sank beneath the waves, the brutal assault continued in the water. The giants threw enormous spears, mercilessly hunting down any sailor who tried to swim toward the exit. In a matter of minutes, the massacre was complete. All 11 inner ships, along with hundreds of brave warriors who had survived the siege of Troy, were completely destroyed. The tight, bottleneck geography of the harbor had functioned flawlessly as a weapon, making physical escape absolutely impossible for the fleet inside. From his position anchored safely outside the cliffs, Odysseus watched the horrifying slaughter unfold. Realizing there was absolutely nothing he could do to save his men, a heavy, agonizing dread washed over him. He drew his sword and shouted the command to his crew to immediately cut the mooring ropes. His remaining crew grabbed their oars, pulling with every ounce of physical strength they had left to surge away from the deadly shadows of the coast. Odysseus had survived, but only because he had isolated himself from the rest of his command. Now he was forced to turn his back on his dying fleet and sail away. When the sun finally set over the Mediterranean, the proud armada that had departed Troy with 12 ships had been reduced to a single battered vessel. The curse of Poseidon was growing stronger. Every mile they fought to close the distance to their homeland extracted a heavier, bloodier toll. Odysseus was now radically isolated. He carried the immense, crushing weight of survivor's guilt, while his hope of ever seeing the shores of Ithaca severely diminished. As darkness blanketed the sea, a mysterious island appeared on the horizon. Its strange forests glowed softly under the moonlight. This was the domain of a beautiful woman with terrifying magical powers, the sorceress Circe, and anyone who dared to enter her palace risked losing their humanity forever. To be continued in Part 7. Next part, the journey to the underworld, where the dead revealed Odysseus's destiny. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to History Stories Dose, so you never miss the next chapter of history.